ADHD. It's only a disorder because you don't fit into these made-up rules of society.
Jessie Mei Li is an English actress.
Best known for her role in the Netflix fantasy series Shadow and Bone.
I realised I spent my entire life masking. I might be smiling, but I would inside just be having the darkest thoughts and just feel like I was spinning, like I was out of control all the time. And then, it would manifest itself in, I'm famously always ill. I think the fact that I got very good at masking has led me to be successful in my career as an actor. It may seem like suddenly everyone's getting ADHD. It's not. It's just that the understanding's going up and therefore more people are coming going, do you know what? I think I've got that. If I said, oh yeah, I'm dyslexic, and you said, well, you don't look anything like my uncle, he's dyslexic. Oh, well, you don't know the first thing about me.
This episode is dedicated to anyone who starts an argument, not because they're upset, but because they're desperate for dopamine. This sponsored ad was agreed to be 90 seconds long, but because I know most of you have ADHD, I negotiated it down to 89 seconds. I challenge you to test your ADHD by seeing if you can sit still for 1 minute 30 seconds while I tell you about our sponsor, Tiimo app. If I can sit down and record take after take of this message for 2 hours, then I'm sure you can listen to 90 seconds. So here's a short word from our sponsor. Tiimo app is a perfectly tailored app that I use daily, and maybe it's worth you giving it a try to see how it might improve organising your life too. Running a podcast is actually a lot harder than you might think, and juggling all of the moving parts would be near impossible if it weren't for Tiimo app. How? Well, Tiimo is designed specifically to hack the neurodivergent brain, a brain that might struggle with time agnosia, object permanence, memory cognitive load, task initiation, anxiety, or procrastination. All things I'm extremely guilty of too. And how on earth does it help you, Alex? I hear you scream impatiently at your computer or phone screens. Well, the award-winning Tiimo app is the perfect life-hacking tool to help your time management and kick you up the bum when you need it most. If you want to stay ahead of the competition, then the visual planning Tiimo app is specifically designed to help your structuring, organising, focusing, and goal setting. It has a visual timer, providing a tangible and visual representation of time to help users pace themselves so you never miss a deadline ever again. It also has an efficient lock screen reminder service to alert those of you who are very out of sight, out of mind with your chores and afraid you might forget them. It brilliantly centres all of your tasks in one place across devices, both on a web and mobile apps, to streamline your overflowing schedules and make them much more digestible and a lot less intimidating. And for those who find big tasks too overwhelming to even start, Tiimo breaks them down into more manageable subtasks to get the ball rolling. In fact, this app helps me so much that it actually reminded me to record this message to advertise the app. Give it a go. Why not? It might just help. Anyway, back to the episode. Jessie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Super excited about this interview. Joy to have you in the studio. At the start of every episode, we reveal your ADHD item. Every episode, I ask my guests to tell me an item that most represents ADHD in their life, and yours is...
Dun, dun, dun.
That's a bed.
My bed!
It's a miniature bed, but the size
bed.
is probably not the important thing.
No, my bed is slightly larger than that in real life. But yes, bed, or like beds generally.
Yeah, that could mean a number of things, right? Like definitely intriguing, but we'll talk about that a bit later on.
Sure, yeah.
We have an opening tradition, Jessie, on the podcast, which is to ask the same question to everyone, and that is, what was your earliest memory of feeling different?
Oh, what a great question. What was my earliest memory of feeling different? I think, and this does kind of relate to the bed thing, I remember so clearly as a child struggling so much to go to sleep. Like, a lot of my earliest memories were just memories of me lying there in my room. You know, shared a room with my brother, and he'd be there snuffling away, sleeping, dreaming, looking peaceful, talking in his sleep, all kinds of things. And I could just never go to sleep. And that was, you know, from very young. I'd quite often be, you know, sneaking downstairs and bothering my mum and whatever. And then as I got older as well, I remember going to like things like sleepovers, and I would just be like, I don't understand how everyone's just gone to sleep. Like, why am I so awake right now. Like what's this like secret thing that everyone else has? And I think that was the main thing. I mean, I felt different for lots of reasons, but I also come from quite a neurodivergent family. So I think, you know, lots of the things that some other people might have struggled with, I think weren't so much of an issue for me. But that thing, they're like, hang on a minute, why can't I seem to be sleeping right now? And why am I feeling so nervous? Or why have I got butterflies or whatever? So that was definitely like very early years. I remember having those feelings a lot. And that has just, it's only gotten worse, Alex, as time's gone on.
Oh, what do you think was keeping you awake? What was running through your mind?
It's so difficult to say. I mean, I remember especially, we'd sometimes go and stay with family or stay with my grandparents. And I would just remember lying there and I'd hear like the clock ticking or like a tap dripping or something. And I would just hear all these noises so loudly in my head. And also having this like inner dialogue with myself all the time. And yeah, that was always kind of, I used to sort of think, I would remember to say, you know, you've just got to lie there and go to sleep. But I would just be thinking about all these things, thinking. And yeah, so I think it was just often this just busy brain, but also I had this constant fear. And I was talking to my dad about this recently, that I was going to wake up in the morning and everyone would be gone. I had this really weird, and I don't know where I'd got this from. I don't know what someone said or whatever it might have been, but from really early years, I would say like, oh, you know, you will be here in the morning. You know, or I needed, like, my dad used to have to pat my back to get me to go to sleep. And it's like I needed to know someone was there, otherwise I couldn't relax.
Do you think that's like a fear of abandonment?
Yeah, I guess so. And like sort of maybe like an inherent sort of loneliness that I couldn't quite articulate at such a young age.
How was school for you? Do you have any early memories of being ostracised and isolated for being different?
Do you know what? I would say, and this might be a bit of a recurring theme with me, but I have been very lucky. I would say in lots of ways I've had actually quite positive experiences, which I know isn't actually that common. I mean, I had lots of friends at school. I think coming from like a neurodivergent family where, you know, I had two parents who, you know, although broken home and everyone was stressed and sad, and that has its own knock-on effects. Two parents who were very gentle. I was never shouted at. I was treated like an adult. Things were always explained to me, conflict resolution, you know. And because of that, I think I was like socialized quite well. And I was quite sort of empathetic and quite happy, you know, with interacting with people. So I had lots of friends. I was always the one making up silly games and whatnot. And because I was one of those kids who, and you hear about it a lot, if you're quite bright or, you know, academically, you know, you don't struggle so much. Like I certainly didn't have any learning difficulties. I did very well at school, in the sense that I sort of just, yeah, okay, well, I understand that. I had two parents who as well were very good at like talking about things, and I was very curious, and that was very much nurtured for me. So I actually did, especially in primary school, great, loved it. I mean, I was always described as being free-spirited, and I was always, you know, people, oh, you know, you're so weird. But because I was so kind of like, I don't know what the word is, I had such sort of a strong inner force that I almost didn't let people said that I was weird or kooky or, don't know, I sort of like, yeah.
It's right, powerful.
I am. Yeah, I was just like, yeah.
Just owned it.
I kind of did. And I think that comes from the examples that were set by my parents. You know, my dad famously is a huge character. Like people who meet him, they're like, okay, makes sense, you know. Very funny man, very gregarious in public, maybe not so much in private. So yeah, I didn't have a lot of those problems, but it began to be more of an issue in secondary school for sure. Where I felt that because there was just certain different expectations, and you know, you're meeting new people. And I remember feeling, you know, starting year 7 and feeling a bit like, oh, like everyone's a bit sounds really rude, but I was a bit like, everyone's a bit boring. And, you know, I then made friends with all the other sort of quirky weirdos found my tribe, all the naughty ones, all the like, who obviously now as adults, we're all diagnosed neurodivergent.
Yes,
you know, we were that group at school. And, but, you know, I remember very much having a feeling of like, especially myself and my other close female friend, who I'm still very close with, in my class, who we were like the weird girls,
that's
you know.
Nice though. In a way, that's nice.
But we had each other, and then we had our extended group of, it was basically just like wacky, you know, kind of emo girls and like very naughty boys. And that was kind of our friend group growing up. So again, even though I kind of felt in the general sense of school and, you know, lots of people, I did feel like an outsider in some ways, but it didn't bother me because I had found my people.
Yeah.
And I had quite strong sense of self, and quite I wasn't one for authoritarianism at all. So I even if teachers and stuff would tell me off, I would just sort of be like, well, you've got to earn my respect before I'm going to take you seriously. And I've seen you be quite abusive. So,
oh wow, yeah.
You know, I was quite strong on that. My sense of right and wrong, I always had that.
Had that justice sensitivity early?
Yeah, but more, I think because, you know, my mum and my dad both being quite nice, kind people, and I couldn't stand people being rude or unkind. But that very much did extend to a lot of adults. And, you know, I later on in life worked at a school. And I remember having this like very clear memory when I was only 19, but I was working at school, and I remember thinking, God, when I was at school, I used to think some of these teachers are genuinely unkind and genuinely seem to dislike children and genuinely just seem to want to just assert their dominance and, you know, very critical, very, you know, probably very like traumatized individuals,
right? Yeah,
you know, who probably aren't well equipped to deal emotionally themselves. You know, so they're explosive, they're rude, they're, you know, putting kids down all the time. But then, yeah, as an adult, I'm sitting there in the staff room, I'm looking around, and lots of the teachers, wonderful people. Some of them, I was like, oh, you're genuinely an asshole. like, you know, I wasn't wrong to kind of sometimes push back against that kind of thing. So yeah, while secondary school was tricky in lots of ways, you know, and more kind of like socially and getting into mischief and, you know, all kinds of things. Still okay, but yeah, it's when you get further into higher education, that's where I really struggled.
That's when the struggles like come more to the surface. Do you think that's because more responsibility, more sort of awareness of having to conform, fit in, put on a particular persona?
Yeah, I think for me, certainly it was, I mean, firstly, as a woman, going through puberty and stuff like that, and especially a neurodivergent woman, like, you know, that is something that I think often isn't spoken about, and how that can affect you, you know, and your emotions and stuff. And I remember just being in kind of emotional turmoil, like a lot through my teenage years. But certainly, like, I went to university for a whole 18 months.
That's the same as me.
Really? No way.
I was kicked out after the first year, about 18 months in. Yeah. So, well, yeah, maybe. So how did you focus at all in uni?
Well, so, I mean, the problem with me going to uni was that I didn't really want to in the first place. And I think it came very much from, I think in my heart, I knew I wasn't well equipped for doing, you know, I never really felt like I was going to have a sort of an orthodox kind of life. I kind of just like knew that inherently, but I was also kind of just aware that you've just got to get on with it. That was kind of like the general thing in my life was like, yeah, things are hard. Yeah, you've got to compromise. You know, you've just got to get on with it and try your best and be grateful. And I had that mentality. But yeah, so I went to uni to study languages because there's a bit of a chatty patty, as you can imagine. And I loved communicating, and I thought that would be like a good fit for me. But then going to uni, first of all, my God, like the living situation, you know, I was living in an accommodation on campus that was it was actually for students. It was the cheapest accommodation, basically, and most of us were there because that's what we could afford. And then you get the odd people who were there because it was the so-called like party accommodation. And, you know, I had a bunch of people in my flat who were, I'm sure they're very lovely now, I don't know, but probably hadn't really had to be considerate of others' space and peace. And I had a handful of housemates who were incredibly disruptive and noisy. And as aforementioned, sleep issues really came to a head. You know, I had one housemate who constantly had people over. I was right next to the kitchen, constantly playing music. And I would very gently often ask him, can you please turn the music down? I've got class in 3 hours.
Right, yeah.
And, you know, I quite often, you know, the retort would be, you know, lighten up, it's first year, it doesn't count. Like, you know, everyone's just trying to have fun. And I was like, yeah, well, maybe you are, but I actually, in order to go to Argentina in my 3rd year, I've got to get a first. And I actually came here to study. So I really struggled. I think that's when I became much more aware of my like sensory issues and how distressed I could become from like sensory overwhelm, basically. But then on top of that, you know, I was only getting like 9 hours of actual class time, let's say, a week. All at 9 a.m. I don't know, it was like some sick joke.
Why did they do it so early?
No idea.
Yeah.
Like some of my friends were doing lectures, you know, in politics or whatever, and they could just sit at the back of the lecture, like, hungover. And
it's always after the big student night out weeks as well. Go out on a Monday and then 9 a.m. lectures on the Tuesday. Who thought of that?
I don't know what it was, but it was always because I was doing languages as well. I was doing French and Spanish, and they were all seminars. So, you know, you're sitting around having to like debate about, I don't know, like diversity, you know, or abortion or something really heavy at 9 a.m. in another language. But I've been kept up all night by my housemates. And it was horrendous. It was not only was I kind of feeling like there wasn't much structure, but then I was really bad at, you know, managing my time well enough. And also just finding like the entire experience so overwhelming that I just would end up kind of like hiding away and staying in my, you know, my accommodation. I didn't really venture out. You know, like I made some lovely friends in my flat who were all individually all very kind of like interesting people. And, you know, that was great in some ways, but it got to 2nd year and my mental health was so bad and I wasn't really going to class and I just ended up dropping out because I was like, there's no point in me being here. But that did lead me on to kind of going down the path that I am now on. So, you know, it all worked out pretty well.
Yeah,
you know,
that's amazing.
In lots of ways, yeah.
When did the neurodiversity, when did that awareness come in? You're diagnosed with ADHD and autism?
Yeah.
What's the sort of journey there?
So I often felt like, I remember, you know, because especially growing up, you know, you'd hear about, oh, you know, autistic people are like this, or, you know, I knew lots of people who had ADHD. Like, as I mentioned, like lots of my male friends were diagnosed with ADHD. And so I was very aware of it as a concept. But then also, again, I think when I was at school, it was often, you know, the people who it was spoken about the most often had learning difficulties, like comorbidities that came along with it. So it might be someone who's autistic, but, you know, really needed extra help learning. But it wasn't until, so after I dropped out of uni, I didn't know what to do, but I knew that I'm good with people. I've always been good with people. And I always felt like I could maybe make a difference with kids because I was like, you know, I've gone through a lot of stuff. I've struggled with my mental health. So I ended up getting a job as a teaching assistant in a secondary school in my town where I grew up, which was really funny because I was only 19 and a lot of my students were like 16. So they're kind of like the same age as me now. I mean, I bumped into one of them about a year ago and it's so funny because I now would see him as like someone my age. It's so bizarre. But yeah, so I did that job. And yes, I was learning support. So I would then go in to sit in classes with someone who quite often they had autism, ADHD, dyslexia. And it was around then I'd be like, we get on very well. Like I just had a really natural rapport with a lot of these kids. And I saw a lot of similarities in the way that they would think. And I would also then see how they would clash with maybe some of the other TAs or some of the other teachers who quite clearly weren't, similarly built. And it was around that time I started to think, it's interesting. I feel like I recognize a lot of myself in this. But again, because these were students who, not always, some of them were very like, not meant to use the term, but like high functioning, but they might have needed like emotional support or something. But I remember thinking like, God, I just remember sitting there really struggling to focus. And even as a TA, I would be sat there in class sometimes and I'd be like, oh my God, like you're an adult, you're all meant to be the adult here, like stay focused. Like I'd be like, fuck me, this is boring. And having to just be like, okay, let's try and find a fun way for us to get through this lesson. But so that's when I started thinking about it. And I then became very aware that, in fact, it was actually talking to my brother about my dad, my dad is, he's on spectrum, he's big ADHD. As I said, he's a massive character, an iconic human being, I must say. And I remember around that time sort of bringing it up with him and saying, Dad, do you think you might be autistic? And him being, oh, no, I don't know about that. But obviously he used to be a detective, so he gets to the bottom of things, So I think he then went away and did lots of research, and as did I. And so that was when I first started, 19, 20, that's when I started thinking, it makes a lot of sense that I could be, on the spectrum, I could have ADHD. But whenever I'd bring it up with people, and it's that classic thing, and I know it's getting better, but it would be like, oh no, you don't have that. Oh no, you don't. Oh no, but my brother has ADHD. I'm nothing like him, or whatever it may be, which is as stupid as saying, because I think people have an understanding about certain types of neurodivergence, like dyslexia is a really good example. Lots of people in my family are dyslexic. And, there was a time when people didn't accept that as a thing, but when it became like a recognized sort of type of neurodivergence, disability, whatever you want to call it, more and more people, the graph goes up, more and more people have dyslexia.
Same with left-handedness.
Exactly,
People didn't think that was real.
So, and I feel that in some ways, the lack of understanding around that kind of thing, someone might be like, with the whole rhetoric nowadays, everyone's suddenly got ADHD because it's trendy. And it's like, if you just take 1 minute just to like take a deep breath and think about it and how it may seem like suddenly everyone's getting ADHD. It's not. It's just that people are more, their understanding's going up, and therefore more people are coming out going, do you know what? I think I've got that. And it's the same thing as dyslexia. Like, so if someone said to me, if I said, oh yeah, I'm dyslexic, and you said, well, you don't look anything like my uncle, he's dyslexic. Well, you don't know the first fucking thing about me. You don't know anything about me, firstly. You don't know what my complex inner world is like. But, quite often, I've now come to realise that quite often people who say that kind of thing, it's just a lack of wisdom, to be honest, because you can be very intelligent. Lots of very intelligent people would have said to me, oh, no, there's all these reasons why you couldn't have ADHD. But as we know, the wisest of people are the ones who know we've always got something to learn.
When I hear people, often it's a neurotypical will say, well, everyone's got ADHD these days. Everyone's coming out with ADHD. I think the reason I think they say that is because everyone does probably have sort of traits of ADHD, right? Everyone will lose their place in conversation. Everyone will forget their car keys from time to time. But I think when a neurotypical person does it, it's like a little wave. But when an ADHD person does it, it's a mountain top and then like a deep dive into the earth. It's the continuousness and the extremeness of those ups and downs that can really cause huge problems.
Yeah.
And I think, like you said, loads of people are playing catch up as awareness has gone up. So ADHD has obviously always been here. Everyone who has ADHD now has had ADHD their whole life. Just loads of, and particularly women, right? They're realizing, they're having that moment of like, oh my God, Like I'm in my 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, suddenly realizing that there's a reason why I have had to mask my whole life and I'm so sensitive to rejection. I finally know. I think, loads of people are playing catch up.
Yeah.
That moment you got your diagnosis, can you walk us through that, the emotions you felt when you had the retrospective emotions for each diagnosis, the ADHD and the autism?
So with ADHD, again, by the point I got diagnosed, I was pretty certain that I had it. But it was kind of like, I kind of felt like I needed, and with autism as well, I kind of needed like almost like the paperwork to be like, sorry, can you just actually believe me for a second? Like, this has actually been verified by a professional. So yeah, I did, it was during lockdown. I did it online, and this was after I'd just come off a big project, filming abroad. I just, basically the start of my career as an actor. And yeah, it was so weird because I knew that I had it, but then actually having that validated, it was both like a relief and just, I felt really sad, to be honest. I remember just being like, oh me, like that could, I thought back to the girl who was at uni who couldn't leave her room because she was having panic attacks every day. And just thinking like, God, like I could have achieved so many different things. I mean, I was really happy that I got to where I was. If anything, I believe that having ADHD has made me good at my job now. But the amount of, my self-worth and like the kind of, honestly, that self-hatred I had because I felt like I wasn't meeting society's expectations constantly. And, it was really hard, but also kind of gave me, at the same time, once I was over that initial kind of like, shock in a way, it suddenly kind of, I don't know, it kind of galvanized me in a sense that I suddenly knew what I needed to do. Like I was suddenly like, okay, right, so I know that, for example, like I used to get very defensive. My mum, for example, when I lived with my mum, she would often say, now, Jessie, you've been talking for a very long time and I have been listening to you, but I'd be like, I haven't been talking very And I would just go completely unchecked, rambling on about things and having loads of ideas and like,
How many times did you change topic mid-conversation?
Oh God, constantly. And it must be exhausting, especially for like a very stressed out single mum. Like,
you end with that, even finishing the original point that you started off trying to make.
I mean, we'd always come round, but it might take an hour, And but then when I kind of, I read the psychiatrist, she's written, Jessie, speaks at an elevated pace and volume. And like, it's literally there in writing that you talk a lot, babe, Then I was like, okay, maybe that's something I can work on. Like, I don't really, and again, I've had quite a positive experience with ADHD in lots of ways. And I feel very lucky that my life now suits my neurodivergence. But so I don't necessarily feel like I have to mask certain things. And I think a lot of the people around me appreciate me for my chattiness and the fact that, we can meet up and just talk for hours about all kinds of things. I want to know. I'm really interested. But it does also mean that I'm like, okay, hang on, let's just take a minute. Especially if I'm interacting with someone who isn't also neurodivergent, I'm much better now at navigating those conversations and being a bit more conscientious when it comes to sort of like adapting to a neurotypical pace of a conversation, which is sometimes quite tricky. And I was even doing it yesterday, talking to someone. I kept saying the word that they were searching for because they weren't saying it fast enough.
It's just classic, isn't it? The slow talker joke. It's physically painful.
Because I'm like, I know where you're going with this. Like,
You've already finished the sentence before they've even got halfway through it.
But someone will go, what's the word? And I've then said about 5 different synonyms that they might be looking for. But so I've managed to sort of, and also then hold myself accountable for things, like, for example, I'm really bad at timekeeping. And because, my dad is East Asian, he's very hot on timekeeping. And my mum was always someone very like, always wanting to be on time, would get very stressed out leaving the house, like trying to make sure everything was, so I kind of was trained to be on time, but I always found it quite stressful. Whereas now, like knowing that I do struggle, I just have things in place, that help me with those things without kind of getting stressed out. And also having other people around me lend a hand or do reminders or just have a bit of patience with those things. So that's all been really helpful. So I think it was, the diagnosis, I was sad retrospectively, but it also made me very hopeful that things could get better. And that's one of I think the beautiful things that comes with being diagnosed, whether that be officially or just, I've read enough about ADHD to know that I've got it.
Yeah.
And I can use this framework now to help myself live a much happier life.
It's big, isn't it? The diagnosis. The psychiatrist gives you the stamp. You get the diagnosis. But then it's like, what now? What do I do with this? And it's a journey, isn't it, for everyone? It's suddenly realizing what is actually you. What is you? What's a mask? What's really intrinsically your personality, and what is a coping mechanism?
Yeah.
It's a journey.
Masking something that's been, masking's my bread and butter. I'm an actor.
Yeah.
And I think that is the main thing, because I often get that question, interviews for work or whatever. Oh, why did you want to be an actor? And, I often just worry, I wonder how honest I should be, but I think I realised I spent my entire life masking. And again, like I said, I think I was always, being myself was always very much encouraged as a kid. Like I didn't have parents who were, trying to shape me in a sense. I think both my parents wanted me to be good and not good, kind and compassionate, and, a good team player and, all of these kinds of things. But essentially they just wanted me to be happy. And I'm very lucky in that. So no one was trying to shape me into a little version of themselves or anything like that. But I would say both my parents, and I do think everything comes back to parenting at the end of the day, whether you're neurotypical or neurodivergent, all these things, your life is mapped out to you by how you were parented, right? And I think the fact that both my parents are better now, that they're in their 60s, but I would say probably on the more people-pleasery kind of end of the spectrum. My dad would rather literally keel over dead than be a nuisance to someone. He's someone who, oh, no, don't worry about me. He's got that. And my mum always putting everyone else first and literally witnessing them both. Because, my parents were separating from when I was a very young age. We all lived in the same house. So that was a very weird dynamic to grow up in. And my brother and I both being quite emotionally sensitive and quite good at recognizing, emotions and understanding people. We could see that both our parents were diminishing their own needs so that we were okay, And I think that then led to me, because that was the model that I saw. So I grew up always being the friend who was always there for you if you needed me. I'd drop anything. But did I share my own stress and upset? No, and until it came bursting out of me, in the middle of a biology lesson. I'd have to have a friend take me to the toilets to cry my eyes out, whatever. But, I really, the masking that I did, it was less about masking my kind of weirdness and more masking my needs. I didn't know how to put my needs first at all. And that was something that I still struggle with now. I'm definitely better, and I've learned about boundaries, and I've learned about that it's okay to kind of put yourself first. I think genuinely didn't think I could do that for a long time. But masking, that's what I do for a living. You're an actor, and I think genuinely, without diagnosing all of my friends, a lot of the actors that I work with are neurodivergent. Lots of people on set, lots of people in creative pursuits. But, especially with ADHD and stuff, I think, because you go around watching, because you're like, what the fuck is going on? Like, I've just got to copy. I've got to watch and learn. I grew up, I was always a very good mimic as a kid. I was very good at mimicking and capturing someone's essence. I was very good at doing that. I would tell a story and someone would go, oh my God, you just looked like him then when you said that or whatever. And then obviously, over the years sort of like got better and better at that. And then obviously now I do it for a living, which is, I'm so lucky to be able to do that. So in some ways, I think, although it was detrimental to my well-being and mental health, I think the fact that I got very good at masking has led me to be successful in my career as an actor. Swings and roundabouts. Is that the saying? I don't know. That's not the right thing, is it?
You said your parents wanted you to be happy, but I've heard you mention in the past a hurricane and trauma in your early years. What were those hurricanes and traumas, and how did that manifest on a day-to-day basis?
Without getting too into specifics, I think as a teenager, I think because I did have a lot of like a pent up emotions from the fact that I wasn't very good at expressing negative emotions. Even though like my parents did their best, I think I was, like lots of children, I was very distressed by my parents splitting up and the kind of disruption that comes with. And I think just seeing both my parents being very unhappy, I found that very difficult. And also just having like an awareness of the world and how unjust it was. I remember having a really early memory of being like early primary school, and we used to have to bring in these shoe boxes at Christmas for kids who didn't get presents.
I remember those. Yeah, it was like Harvest Festival.
It was like, you'd bring in a shoe box full of, you'd put toothpaste and some sweets and a pair of snuggly socks for children I went to a Christian school, children who didn't get presents. And I remember being like, especially when, you're told, oh, Father Christmas, he goes round and he gives all the good children presents. I was like, why are these children not getting presents? And then because they're the country that they're living in, there's wars going on, there's this going on, or some people don't have, and I would just remember just feeling so upset all the time as a kid, like really, really upset about just like the state of the world. And I think I ended up then, as I mentioned as well, seeing lots of adults in my life be bad people, not close in my family, but I witnessed a lot of injustice and I felt very angry about these things, which kind of led me down quite a rebellious route, shall we say, which then led me down a path of sometimes getting into situations which were dangerous and traumatic. I had various unpleasant things happen to me. Not to say that wouldn't have happened to me had I not been neurodivergent, but I do think a lot of like my impulsivity and recklessness and stuff like that led to these things. And again, always having to pretend like everything was okay and just laugh it off. It's all good, class clown, ha ha ha, But I had a lot of these things that I would then be lying awake at night, not being able to cope with and not be able to move through, but I just didn't know how to deal with it. So again, I think I felt like I was living a double life a lot of the time when I was younger, where I had, Jessie Lee at school, at college, whatever, who was just like joking around and having fun and like being a good friend and, whatever, being a bit naughty, but whatever. But then I'd go home and I'd have this it's difficult to explain. I just had this like sort of black hole that I never let anyone see. I would never let anyone see that side of me at all. And I've even to this day, it's been difficult to kind of like get those two sides of myself to come together. Because I do, I have a very strong front. People often say like, if someone I've just met, I'll say like, oh yeah, you have struggles with this, or even just that I'm neurodivergent. People go, oh, you don't seem socially difficult, like difficulties socially or whatever. I was like, you actually just don't know what's going on. I've got a very strong armor out on the outside, but I'm not letting you see what's going on. So it was kind of like, I remember sort of sitting there often, I'd be in a situation and I might be smiling, but I would inside just be having the darkest thoughts and just feel like I was spinning, like I was out of control all the time, but kind of having to like hold it in. And then, yeah, it would manifest itself in, I'm famously always ill. That's like something that, you know, friends always are, oh, here we go. Oh, I can't come, I'm really ill. I have an issue where if I get very distressed, this has been since childhood, I cannot stop vomiting. And again, like, you know, when people would sort of question whether or not I'm neurodivergent, I'd be like, well, explain that then. Do you do that? Do you get so distressed and overwhelmed by your surroundings that you cannot stop being sick and your body I get a fever? It's like I have like an autoimmune response to like stress. So yeah, I think it's taken me until, you know, I'm nearly 30 years old. It's taken me like until now to actually deal with a lot of things that happened to me when I was younger that I had just pushed aside and been like, worse things have happened. I didn't grow up in a war zone. I didn't grow up, you know, to actually give myself the time to be like, that was really fucking hard and you shouldn't have had to go through that. You know, so that's when I say talking about like trauma and feeling, you know, this like chaos, it's just this internalized thing that was really difficult for me to ever let anyone see. The only people that would see that side of me would be, unfortunately for them, any romantic partners that I have, or very, very close family. And even then I would try and hold that to myself because I was so worried about stressing anyone else out more than they already were, you know.
It's invisible.
Yeah.
That internal struggle, invisible. No one sees it.
Yeah.
And that's why if you say you've got ADHD or autism, the people who don't see that internal struggle, which is most people, they don't believe you.
Yeah.
Or they say, no, you don't look like what an autistic person should look like, or ADHD. It's that internal, it's the invisibleness of it, which it creates more injustice for you.
Yeah. I find it really crazy. I think it's just because I'm just not wired like this, but I have very little expectations about anything. Like I never really go into a situation expecting something because you are always going to be disappointed or surprised, but like in a more positive sense. But if you go into something or you expect someone to be something, you're not going to be correct because we all have our own complex realities. We're all different. And so I find it completely bizarre that people will like, well, you're not what I was expecting, you know, or like I you know, have a certain idea of how you as a neurodivergent person should be, and you're not lining up with that. Like I mentioned the having like difficulties socially. Yeah, I might not seem like I'm shy. I might not seem like I struggle to communicate, which are all, to be honest, like outdated ideas of neurodivergence. There are many different ways to be, and it, again, depends on your parenting. You know, it depends on the social situation you grew up in, your community, all of this stuff. But the things that I do, you know, and I'm not ashamed of it because I think in actually lots of ways it's actually quite good sometimes, but I am the biggest oversharer. Like yes. I will meet someone and like I did when I came in here, I will immediately tell people things that like, you know, someone else would probably keep to themselves for fear of being judged or whatever. But I just don't do that. And I don't see the point in doing that. I love it when we can just get into the nitty gritty. I don't want to do a back and forth small talk. I'd rather just get straight in there, you know. But I will ask people incredibly invasive questions that I don't know I'm overstepping a boundary. I'll be like, you know, go on a date. No, I don't really do that. But like, you know, if I went on a date with someone, I immediately say, you know, what's your relationship like with your mother? Or something, you know, and sort of not seeing or caring about certain social mores. That is where my social awkwardness comes in. And I don't think it's necessarily like I don't see it as a negative thing. Yes, it can probably like, you know, it's probably not the best thing sometimes because unfortunately, due to the fact that I'm in the public eye, and I love to chat, I love to connect, but then also I also don't want everyone knowing all my business all the time. So I'm constantly in this like battle between like wanting to connect with someone, but then also being like, but I also don't want you to write that on the internet.
Yeah, it must be a tricky, unique place for you, because you can overshare. If you're not in the public eye, you can overshare and it's fine. But if you're in the public eye, you're going to be in the Daily Mail or the newspapers.
Oh my God, yeah, absolutely. What you've heard from what I've been saying.
I overshare a lot, and I get anxious about what I've said. I don't often remember what I've said. I can't even imagine being in the public eye and then having to wake up the next morning and being reminded what you've said. But are there any other sort of, do you think, misunderstood traits of neurodivergence that you now give yourself an easier time now that you have an understanding of ADHD and autism?
Yeah, I think it's so difficult sometimes because my norm is my norm. So even to this day, I actually don't know. Some of the things that I do are weird. Like, not that they're weird. I think I'm so very accepting of myself that I just don't always question things. But, it's not until someone will say, oh, you're like quite disarmingly honest. Or, I will be quite forthright with my opinions about things. But yeah, I'm trying to think what's like almost like a misconception about, I think obviously, and it's been talked about a lot, but, having a lot of the things that we associate with neurodivergence are very male-centric. I remember it being said when I was a kid, someone describing autism and ADHD to me as being extremes of the male brain. Did you ever hear that being said? Like autistic or Asperger's, as they would have said at the time.
No, but tell
Asperger's is like the extreme male brain. Very logical, very, I can't remember all the things they'd say, but, someone like, whereas like the feminine, the female brain, more creative, more communicative, more whatever. And I think that's pervasive even now. I think lots of people they just don't understand what it's like for women, but also not even just women, non-binary people. There are lots of men who, like I have, I've had men in my life who have been diagnosed autistic, for example, but didn't meet the like classic male criteria. It was only when you look at the way that they diagnose women and you're like, oh, well, that makes total sense. Like, you're maybe not interested in like trains and maths, but you really love animals and storytelling or whatever it may be. So I think there's quite a lot of, still to this day, there's way less understanding of how these things affect women, how the way that we socialize boys and girls is different. Like women supposedly are better at masking, are better at social, communication and stuff. And that might be, again, nature versus nurture, who knows? But I also do think the expectations we put on little boys, they are given less responsibility. They are given less sort of, instruction on how to be caring and nurturing, which means probably, they do have more struggles socially. So little neurodivergent boys are going to be the ones who maybe, struggle to connect.
I know, it's so true. I think the boys have lots more passes, I think, when they're young, because there's different expectations, I think, with the sexes. I think girls are taught that a lot of them, they should be polite and well-behaved, and if their ADHD traits contradict that, then there's more pressure to keep it internalized, which then just compounds that lack of connection with self, further anxiety. How many women are misdiagnosed with anxiety because that's what they go to the doctor with, because they don't understand why it feels like they've got 12 squirrels on caffeine barreling around in their head and they get misdiagnosed.
Yeah.
How does this all cross over to the film set? Do you find yourself drawn to other neurodivergent people on film sets?
I mean, I would argue that everyone's neurodivergent on a film set. No, but definitely a high percentage. And the more I talk to people, the more everyone, they're either already diagnosed or they're like, all my friends are, or I think I am. I think there are certain industries, certain jobs that do just lend quite well to neurodivergent people. And I think film and TV, definitely one of them. Because, you've got to be creative, you've got to be able to see things holistically, you've got to problem solve, think on your feet, deal with pressure. I often think as well as about like things like going into medicine, paramedics, stuff like that. Like these are all things that actually a lot of people I know who are neurodivergent flourish in. They thrive in those environments.
Like the A&E department in a hospital.
Exactly.
I've spoken to a few people. That's their sweet spot.
And I think it's the same thing for me. Like I couldn't be luckier, I think. I mean, while my job comes with its challenges for sure, and we can get onto those, but the fact that I get paid to do something I love doing, to essentially have, we all have our special interests. Acting is my special interest. It's the thing that I love most, something that I feel like I'm good at. I've always been a storyteller. I've always loved doing impressions, like all of these things. And a film set is almost like the perfect environment for me, in the sense that all the things that I find stressful, timekeeping, timekeeping is actually a really good example. As an actor on set, because I know lots of people don't know how it all works and stuff. Let's say, if I'm shooting something and I know, okay, right, I'm getting picked up from where I'm staying at 5 a.m., right? Someone's picking me up. I'm going to set where someone will meet me and say, Jessie, you're going to be in hair and makeup in 10 minutes. I'm going to come and knock for you. Or do you need a little 2-minute warning? And I say, yeah, that'd be great. Give me a warning. They come knock for me. They send me there. I get sent there. There's always someone making sure that I'm in the right place at the right time. So I can sit back and go, I guess I need to focus on what I've got to do, right? It's not that you're being shepherded around because you're like a special princess. It's because, they need to make sure that you're in the right place at the right time. And also because all the bloody actors are neurodivergent. If they didn't do that, it would be, but a film set, it works. It's like a clock. There are all these moving parts, all these different cogs. Everyone's got their job. And for me, it's just like the perfect kind of like playground, because I'm there to do the thing I love doing. The stuff that stresses me out isn't there, because people are sort of telling me where to go. I'm not having to self-regulate things that are really stressful. And my God, I just have to say, because I'm currently staying up in London, and I was thinking about this earlier when I was traveling here. I was thinking, oh my God, if I had a job where I had to get up for the rat race, if I had to get up early in the morning and get on a packed commuter train where everyone's standing this close to you and you're getting everyone breathing on you, and then you're rushing around and you're getting, oh no, there's delays, there's this, there's that. Then I'm in a brightly lit office with strip lighting, and there's smells and there's sounds and there's expectations and there's deadlines and there's this and there's that. Like if you're a neurodivergent person and you work in an environment that is set up for a neurotypical person, like, I just want to say, fucking well done you. Because it makes me feel emotional even thinking about it, because the idea of living like that, it makes me feel stressed just thinking about it. And I feel so incredibly lucky, like genuinely so blessed that I've been able to live my life. I've carved out a path where I can do something that I love doing. Again, comes with its challenges, but it's all different. But the idea that there are so many people who are having to live by insane expectations set by society that even neurotypical people find difficult. And I don't want to diminish the strife of neurotypical people, because I think that can sometimes be it's not an us versus them thing, in the sense that neurotypical people mask. You might be going through a divorce, your child's really sick, you've got to put on a brave face. We're British, you've got to put on a brave face, right? But I think the thing that comes with being neurodivergent, you're doing all that, but on top of it, it's like you're turning up. To me, it feels like you're turning up to a job where everyone just expects you to, it's your first day on the job and you have no idea what you're doing, and everyone just expects you to know what you're doing. And if you don't just succeed, you're going to get fired. So just sort it out, get on with it. And you're there oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. I just feel it's so difficult for the average person who's neurodivergent to go through life and also eat well, look after themselves, have time to do things like meditating. And if you're working a really busy job and you're commuting and you've got kids and all these other things going on, like, it's so painful and it's so hard because, like, even just the fact that it's called ADHD, it's a disorder. Like, it's so strange because obviously it's only a disorder because you don't fit into these made up rules of society that in nature don't exist. I mean, imagine if we all, thousands of years ago, we live in small communities, you need lots of different kinds of people. You need the people who are neurotypical and you need the people who are neurodivergent to create a cohesive community of people that succeeds, that thrives, right? But then if you're living in an individualistic society where everything is just about growth, making money, succeeding, getting through the day, and you don't have the support system of a community around you, like, so hard. So that's why I feel very lucky that my job, it's different every day, but it's also familiar enough and similar enough every day that I also feel like, okay, I know what's going on, I know the boundaries, I know the rules. And it's exciting and it kind of tickles all those parts of my brain that need to be tickled. And I know that I'm really lucky, but that's the thing, so many people aren't. And those are the people that I really feel for. And, I just think there's so many other ways that we could do things in society that would just make life better for everyone.
Flexible start times in the office, for example. I totally agree, 100%. I do a lot of work in businesses about simple accommodations.
Yeah.
Flexible start times, working from home, giving people agendas ahead of meetings. There's so many little things that can make the life so much easier for. I think you've really nailed it. You found a career that is so accommodating for. I think that's where a lot of people go wrong. I think is putting all that energy into trying to fix themselves and to try and hack their ADHD. I think that attention, if it's channeled into a way, how can I alter and put more energy into building self-awareness and navigating into a route that's better accommodated for my brain? I think that's easier said than done. But I think if you can find your passion, which we all have, right? We all have things that we're amazing at. If you can find what that is, then I truly believe people with ADHD can become world-beating, world-class at that thing once they find it. We're halfway through the episode now, and I know what you're all thinking. Where the hell is the midway sponsor we've all been patiently waiting for, Alex? Well, thank you for reminding me. A word from our sponsor, Stasis. I talk to a lot of my fellow ADHD friends that take the prescribed stimulants like Adderall or Vyvanse, and they always say the same thing, that the afternoon energy crashes, sleep interruptions, and irritability these meds cause can really deter them from enjoying the benefits that these stimulants provide. So much so that it makes them question taking them altogether. A close entrepreneurial friend of mine even came off meds entirely because he was literally and figuratively tired from the negative effects associated with these stimulants, until I urged him to try Stasis, which helped him, in his own words, correct his natural chemical balance, in turn helping with deeper sleep, even out his energy levels and promoting a calmer mood. Well, I'm happy to let you know that with Stasis, you don't have to choose anymore. Stasis is the first of its kind supplement that you take with your stimulant. It contains naturally derived vitamins, minerals, adaptogens, and antioxidants that level out the less desirable effects of stimulants, so you can take it without suffering from the downsides. It's been precision formulated to target the root causes of those downsides by regulating dopamine levels, warding off cortisol spikes, and targeting oxidative stress, all with ingredients that come straight from nature. Less brain fog, less jitters, increased focus, more sustained energy throughout the day, and less stress. If you take stimulants, why wouldn't you boost your brain health with Stasis? ADHD Chatter listeners can get 20% off with the link in the description. Try it for yourself. And maybe I'm biased, but there is one other proven way to relieve stress, and that's by carrying on watching the episode. What do you think being misunderstood does to a person's self-esteem in the long term?
Oh, yeah, I know that one quite well. I think I often felt misunderstood. And I've gotten much better at this, but when I was younger especially, and I'm much better now, I used to, if I felt like someone hadn't understood me, I would oh my God, I was like a dog with a bone. I would constantly say, I'd bring up the same issue over and over again just to make sure, like, are we on the same page? And maybe they didn't understand me. You know that thing? Did you understand, right? Because this is what I was feeling. And I go away again. You know that thing? I would do that all the time because I think I was so used to feeling misunderstood or that I hadn't communicated something clearly enough. And I had one relationship where that was a real issue, where my partner was just like, you need to drop this. The conversation over. And I would find that this was like pre-diagnosis. I would find that so hard because I was like, yeah, you're right. Like, but now I'm struggling with it again. It's that rumination. It's that like, you know, inability to sometimes self-regulate. And I think that comes from being misunderstood and sort of feeling this intense need to connect with people. And especially like, yeah, I think I've very much felt I hated, when I was younger, I hated being a girl. In the sense that there were all these kind of things that people would say about women and girls that I was like, that's just not true. Like, I would say something and so go, oh, well, you know, girls never say what they mean. I literally say what I mean all the time. Like, you know, and I would then often kind of almost go like push back so much with that kind of thing that I might even come across abrasive or again, like be too honest with people about things because I was like, no, that's not the case. You know, I've had real issues with like my self-worth and self-esteem, but in quite like in an odd way, because in many ways I'm very confident and I'm happy with who I am. But then, and that's taken work, but it comes up for me in certain specific areas, like for example, like romantic relationships. That is something I have a massive issue with, in the sense that I think I've had some really traumatic relationships that have led me to sort of be like, whoa. I don't think I can get to that point because, you know, it's that kind of being misunderstood by someone who's meant to be very, you know, your closest person, let's say, or partner in crime or whatever, and being misunderstood by that person and the inevitable, you know, things like gaslighting and convincing, you know, all of these toxic things. I've been in toxic relationships. Not to say that I'm just a victim, you know, I added to the toxicity of said relationships because of undiagnosed, you know, neurodivergence, I think. But even still to this day, you know, it's something that I struggle with more than anything is this idea of it's almost like I don't want to let people in for fear of being misunderstood when they see who I am. And that's something that I continue to work on, you know, as I get older.
What would you say to your younger self if you could go back in time with the sort of the knowledge and awareness you have of neurodivergence now?
What would I say? Oh, we'd have some really good chats. me and my younger self, my God. I would tell that girl just to give herself a break and just be like, you know what? It's okay. Like, it's okay to feel what you're feeling. Probably to let it out. Genuinely, like, you know, all of those pent up emotions I was hiding all the time. And, you know, so I've been seeing, you know, been working on that, doing acupuncture and stuff, treating like all my kind of weird physical symptoms, which actually I think, you know, we've come to realize a lot of it is pent up pain and rage. Actually, I've got a lot of anger that I didn't allow myself to feel. So I think I'd probably go back and I'd tell little me just to let it out. Maybe go do a big old primal scream somewhere every now and then. Because, like, yeah, if you don't express these things, it's going to come out. You know, it's all energy, isn't it? It's going to come out whatever way that is. It's going to come out in you having a nervous breakdown or a chronic health issue or, you know, whatever it might be. So that's what I say to her, like, girl, you know, just get it out. Yeah.
I really want to talk about the internal tug of war that must I assume must be created when you have both ADHD and autism, and how that could interfere with how RSD presents. But first, I want to draw attention back to your ADHD item on the table.
Oh yeah,
and find out the explanation behind why a bed is your ADHD item.
So, I mean, I kind of touched upon it earlier, but so my thing with beds is that I feel like it kind of rules my life in the sense that sleep has always been an issue, chronic insomnia, and, you know, lying awake. I mean, even just last night, for example, I'm currently staying somewhere new, so I haven't stayed before. That is always an issue. And you know, and that is something that I think that's more ASD issue. Like when I'm in a new environment, as much as I might try and just, you know, I do all the things I'm meant to do, I meditate, I remind myself of, you know, I'm calm, I'm safe, all of this stuff. In a new environment, I just can't settle. So, but sleep has always been a problem for me. And that in itself has just so many knock-on effects, because when you're tired, anyone who, you know, I've got friends who, like, if they don't sleep like 8-9 hours a night, they're like, oh my God, I only slept like 6 hours last night or something. I'm so stressed. And I can see it on their face, like they look exhausted. I have regularly, and it's not a flex, this should never be a flex, because I feel like people are like, it's like the pain Olympics. They're like, oh, well, I only slept 2 hours last night or whatever. It's such an unhealthy rhetoric, because when I was younger, I genuinely didn't understand. Like, people would say I didn't sleep a wink last night, and I go, oh God, yeah, no, me neither. But they didn't mean that literally.
It's two different.
Yeah, I would literally have not slept.
Yeah, literally.
And then someone else would be like, oh, I literally didn't sleep a wink last night. And I go, okay, so this happens to everyone, so I can't make a big deal out of it. Whereas now I know the fact that I regularly, especially if I'm stressed, will do an all-nighter. And I know that for a fact because I have this ring which tracks my sleep. It's not even like, oh, I've actually fallen asleep for 3 hours and I just haven't remembered. I literally, when I've been stressed, will stay awake all night until I eventually might crash like the next night or the night after. But the knock-on effects it has on your health, physically, mentally, horrendous. People also, if I say I've got sleep issues, occasionally people will say things like, oh yeah, you should really sort that out, because, you know, if you don't sleep well, then, you know, you die younger. You know, I read this book that says, like, if you don't sort out your sleep, you know, it takes off 10 years. I'm like, yeah, thank you. Thank you for saying that. I'm really glad you've said that to me.
Doesn't help with the health anxiety, right?
Yeah, honestly. But then also on the flip side, so while often being in bed, and again, like I said, from a very young age, lying there and being like, why can't I sleep? Why can't I sleep? That clock's ticking. He's snoring. This is happening. There's something outside. You know, feeling genuinely like trapped in this, like, it feels like purgatory. It feels like this sort of like liminal place. When you're lying in bed and you can't sleep. I feel like I've spent half my life in that state. And it feels like a prison. But on the flip side, my bed is like an absolute refuge. Like if I've had like a bad day or I'm really like just overwhelmed and stuff, straight into bed, covers over my head, you know, I've got 2 cats nearby, purring, whatever. So while it's so bizarre, because while I kind of dread going to sleep. I dread when it's like, and I have the classic, you know, ADHD revenge procrastination nonsense that we all do. Like, oh, I feel like I haven't had enough time to myself, so I'm now going to stay up really late for like no apparent reason and not settle myself, you know. So I feel like I'm doing that. But then also, you know, I find that in times of stress, it's the first place I want to be. I can miraculously, you know, and I'm sure there's some science behind this, and I'm sure there are plenty of people who can tell me all kinds of advice on how to sort out my sleep, and I am working on it, but I can fall asleep in the middle of the day sometimes like that. Not even when I'm exhausted, just like, I don't know what it is about, it's something about the way maybe I've given myself trauma about sleep or something, I don't know, but it's almost like when there's no pressure on it, I'll have the best nap of my life. I love a lovely nap. I can do that till the cows come home. But going to sleep in like a regular way is so difficult for me. And I feel like so when it comes to ADHD specifically, that's where I have my racing thoughts. That's where I have all my, worries and, thrashing around or waking up full of stress because I know that I've got to get up at, oh my God, my pickup's at 4:45. What time is it? Oh my God, it's midnight. Now it's 1:30. Oh, now it's,
Yeah, so relatable. I think I have a phobia of hotel rooms. I have to sleep in them quite often. I do talks around the country. I was in one 2 nights ago. I can't sleep in hotel rooms. I get overstimulated by the new environment. I check in, I'm super excited. Oh, check out the bed. Oh, a bath. When there's a bath, that's a big thing. Check out the hairdryer, see what brand it is, the view. And I'm so buzzing from the excitement. But then that fades. And then for me, I said to my partner, I called her up the other night and I said, hotel rooms are chronically lonely for me. And I'm just lying there in the dark, unable to sleep. Then I look at my alarm, like, I've got 6 hours to go until I need to be at the event. 5 hours, 4 hours, 3 hours. The anxiety comes back for a different reason and I haven't slept.
Yeah. It's so bad how we can have like exactly the same experience. Like I had that the night I got to this place like 2 nights ago where, I was, it's not the nicest place, I won't lie. Bit spooky, one might say.
Yeah.
And there are all these just like unfamiliar noises, and it's right next to sort of like a sort of back alley where there's a lot of sort of crashing of doors and shouting. Sort of lots of noises. My brain's going, what's that? What's that?
Yeah.
Even things like, I was thinking, oh, maybe I'll have a lovely bath. I saw there was a bath. I was like, oh, okay.
Always a win, isn't it?
I was like, there's a bath. I was like, maybe I'll have a lovely bath. And I went down, went to the shops and got myself like a CBD like bath bomb. I thought, that will settle me. There's no plug.
No plug in the bath?
No. I went through the whole Airbnb looking for, it was, it's very basic. It's very basic.
Get a glass upside down. I've solved that problem before. But then you've got to be really careful not to smash it.
Oh my God.
It creates like a vacuum, right?
Of course. Alex, you've actually right, I know what I'm doing. Sorry, see you later. I was so disappointed because I was like, I really wanted something just to like really calm me down because I felt so stressed. And I was just like, there's no plug. I was like gone on this mission to get a bath bomb. And I was just like, first world problems, right? But I was just like, fuck, really wanted a bath. And I'd scrubbed the entire thing. I found all the cleaning stuff.
Invested in it as well.
Really invested.
So
This was going to be my thing, and it, again, not the cleanest place. And that was a big old disappointment. But it was such a struggle, to sleep. And I do I know that, for example, this weekend I am going to just probably be in bed. Not that one, bigger one.
There's a tiny bed on the table. People who are listening, just the audio, there's a
tiny
bed.
miniature doll's bed. But I know that I probably will spend a lot of time in bed, just like trying to regulate myself again, because I'm so exhausted from this week. And I'm sure I feel like lots of other neurodivergent people I know have a similar thing, rotting in bed.
Yeah.
I've seen that that's... Hashtag relatable.
Jessie, I want to do the ADHD agony aunt section, which is actually called the washing machine of woes, because my item is a washing machine, because I always forget my laundry in the machine. And I ask, your laughter probably answers that question. I was going to ask, do you forget your laundry in the machine?
Several times I've done that recently, actually. Luckily for me, I have 2 other people in my house who, we've all got ADHD. And we're all very good at, going, there's some washing in there. And we're all quite good at helping each other out with it. But that is a regular occurrence in my household.
Definitely. I have got better though since I've started using the Tiimo app, which is the sponsor of the show. But every week I ask my Instagram community to send me their ADHD woes.
Oh, cool,
and I pick one and put it in the machine, which I'll read out to you and see if we can get some wisdom. This week, in the washing machine of woes, somebody has asked, everyone seems to be ADHD these days, and some call it a superpower, but I see none of these attributes of it. It ruins my life. Does it affect you negatively? And do you have any warts and all accounts of when it renders you powerless to make me feel less alone?
That's a really good point that person makes, because I think I often will speak about it positively because that's just the way I'm wired. And again, as I mentioned before, I'm very privileged to have a life where it suits it, you know. I think the issue is that if the world wasn't set up the way that it is, if our societies were different and we valued different things, like if you think about the way that to be successful in this world, and it is I have nothing against men, let it be clear, like, you know, but it's male dominated, neurotypically, you know, set up. And that means that, you know, certain traits are valued over others. And it might mean that your neurodivergent qualities are seen as being, you know, unhelpful or, you know, not conducive to like the hustle or the grind or whatever it may be. And I think I had this whole thing of having to like reframe, like, there's nothing like inherently wrong with you. It's not a disorder. It's just you're a different type of brain. You're a different type of person. We aren't all the same. And yeah, you can, having ADHD and having the ability to thrive, like let's say you're like a young guy who's got loads of energy and, you know, whatever, you end up going into being a gardener, a tree surgeon, be outdoors all the time, or you work with animals, whatever, that's going to be an amazing, you know, and you'd be really good at that job. That you could describe that as a superpower, whatever, you know. But when you're in a situation where the qualities the things that you do bring to the table aren't valued, of course you feel like shit. Of course you feel like it makes your life a misery. And to that person, you know, it's such a shame that they've been made to feel that way, because there's nothing inherently wrong with you. It's just that maybe the environment that you're in isn't nurturing you in the way it should be.
How does your autism and ADHD conflict within you?
It's so tricky because it's like my autistic side has quite high needs in terms of like sensory issues, and you know, I am very literal, but also exist in like a creative space where like lots of things aren't literal, and you know, lots of joking around and stuff. Had to sort of like learn about sarcasm, I remember growing up, but then my like ADHD side longs for novelty and longs for like, what's the naughty thing? What's like the next kind of little spicy thing I can do? Even though I know it directly, it's counteracting what I need as an autistic person. So it does feel like you've got two creatures in your head that both need like very different things. And that's quite an exhausting experience.
Yeah, more of the invisible energy that other people don't see.
Yeah, exactly.
Here's an interesting question for you, Jessie. If you were confronted with a room full of the most neurotypical people you can imagine, unable to empathise with your ADHD and autism, and you had 1 minute, how would you best describe your respective conditions to make sure they walk away feeling different regarding these diagnoses?
Well, firstly, I'd struggle if it was just 1 minute. I think we've discovered that.
It says 5 minutes on the card. I actually
1 minute. It's so hard. I guess I'd probably say to them, like, we all want to be accepted for who we are and for our needs and stuff. And, you know, we're all different. We have different tastes. And so let's say you don't believe or understand my neurodivergence. If you think of it like, you know, Alex, the neurotypical, maybe your favorite flavor of ice cream is vanilla ice cream, right?
Mint.
You love it. If I was to say, what? You don't love vanilla ice cream? No, because I know someone who loves vanilla ice cream. They don't know anything like you. That is such a silly thing to even think. That's a silly thing to think. You don't know about someone else's inner world in the same way that no one knows about yours. And I think having expectations of how other people should be it's, we're all different. So it's just so much better to stay open. And if you don't understand something, ask questions, because we've all got something to learn. And, being open-minded just means that you're going to grow and just be a more learned, interesting person. So maybe there's something that we can all learn from each other.
Yeah, I like it.
Was that a minute? That was probably about 5.
Good. Less judgment, more curiosity.
Curiosity is key.
Approaching these nuances of the brain.
Yeah.
And penultimately, with an impassioned speech, and you can be as dramatic as you like, what would you say to a theoretical casting director who says they wouldn't hire you because you have AuDHD?
Whew, I would say, honey, you are in the wrong industry because you're not going to find many good actors if you're only going to be casting neurotypicals. I would say that, that being an actor calls for mirroring and masking and all these things that we as neurodivergent people go through growing up. And, some of the best performers and comics and musicians and stuff, like, we experience the world in a different way. That means that we can express these things through our art. And I think that you're making a mistake.
Yeah, absolutely. Powerful stuff. Thank you, Jessie. And just finally, actually, we have a closing tradition on the podcast, which is to deliver a letter to you from the previous guest, wherein the previous guest has written 3 rules to live by. So I'm going to deliver the letter to you.
That's so cool.
And if you could read it
I love this.
for us, that would be much appreciated.
Okay. 3 rules to live by. It's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice. I love that. Number 2, don't stress the small stuff. Very, very good. And number 3, remember.
Just remember.
Remember your mum and dad miss you every minute of every day. Call them.
That's nice. I actually remember.
I'd like that.
I remember that one.
Oh, lovely. Those are good.
Yeah.
I agree with all those. Yeah.
Fantastic. Jessie, this has honestly been remarkably funny and very insightful. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I've loved it. It's my favourite thing, chatting about ADHD, and it's been an absolute pleasure.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Jessie, how many domain names do you own?
What does that mean?
Like www dots, business ideas.
Do you know what? It's a big fat 0, I think.
Really?
Yeah, I think so.
That's crazy.
No, I don't have.
Actually, the last guest said that. Maybe that's like not as.
Do you know what? I'm just not. I'm not
relatable as I thought.
I'm not tech savvy. I have plenty of ideas, but they're all up here, all written down on reams of sheets of paper I've ripped out of books.
Yeah, fair. Reusable shopping bags when you go shopping. Are you good at remembering those?
Depends where I am. Mostly, yes. I always have one. I always have one with me, just because I'm always picking up random stuff. But lots of other people in my life are terrible, and we have like a cupboard of them.
Yeah,
in the
I've
house.
got a cupboard, a bulging cupboard in the kitchen.
Yeah, which is partly why I have one with me always.
Are you a voice note person or a texter?
Voice notes. I'm actually both. Sometimes the lucky people get a mixture. They get a hybrid.
What's the maximum length of a voice note do you think you could receive and then be happy?
I will be honest and say, especially during lockdown, I would have sometimes do voice notes of people that would go for sometimes like 30 minutes.
Yeah, that's mad.
Because we saw it as like a letter. Sometimes you don't always want to have a phone call because it's like you're doing stuff, but I would get like I'm not joking, a 30-minute voice note from a friend, and I would walk along listening to it, and I'd then make little mental notes or physical notes, and then I'd reply. Something quite nice about that. I'd be like, I'm imagining I'm writing it with a quill by candlelight or something.
How many notebooks do you own?
No comment.
Yeah, well, one more will solve all the problems.
Yeah, of course.
Fictional characters, do you think, might have undiagnosed ADHD?
Oh, God, so many.
Yeah.
God, off the top of my head, I can't even think of any, but...
We had Maria from The Sound of Music last time, I think, or the 2 guests ago.
Oh, yeah, that's a great one.
Inspiration.
I mean, any character played by Jack Black or Jim Carrey.
Yeah. How many unread WhatsApp messages?
Messages or chats?
You looked quite shameful then for a second, like you didn't want to say it.
No, it's 87.
87. That's not,
87 chats.
87 WhatsApps. That's actually really bad. That's a lot for WhatsApp, because WhatsApps are more like core communication. I mean, you don't get any like junk WhatsApps, or you shouldn't get many.
I'm so sorry. Yeah, I'm famously, I have to do them in like a session.
Yeah, I have 24.
87. It's because there were so many group chats, and I've got friends from primary school, secondary school, college, uni, that job, this job, acting, and they've all got 17 group chats each. So,
do you think any of those you've replied mentally, and you've compartmentalized that? I think, right, I've dealt with that.
Oh,
but you never actually sent the reply.
all the time. All the time. I was like, oh shit, I didn't actually. I had such a great reply, and I just didn't send it, and I've only noticed it's 3 months later.
Behind you, one of the guests' ADHD items is a big spoon.
Shut up.
This is a massive spoon, right?
Oh my God. I missed that. That is a big spoon.
Because some people in the community say they don't like big spoons. Are you okay with big cutlery? Or do you prefer small cutlery?
I hate small stuff.
You hate small stuff?
No, I love that.
Yeah.
If someone is to give me, if I was having like a dessert, someone gives me like a teaspoon, I'm like, can you go get me a bigger spoon?
That's fascinating.
That's really weird. But
it shows how nuanced and different we all are, right?
I think for me, it's an ASD thing. Like I cannot stand. Even I hate to say it, but that miniature bed has been freaking me out this entire time. I can't stand it. It's like famously amongst my friends, they will jokingly give me miniature things as gifts because they know it makes me feel sick.
What do you think? Why do you think they make you feel sick?
I don't know, but I really like big stuff. Like a giant chocolate bar. Love that. If you gave me like a mini one, no way, I won't eat it. Canapes, mini food. I'd rather go hungry. Seriously, I have gone hungry at weddings. Many times.